Good morning. Oh, wow, look at you. Y'all are beautiful. Some of you got the memo about the green, and I thought that was neat. Did you notice the symmetry in the choir? We had exactly the same shade of green on both sides of the top row. I thought that was pretty neat. Believe it or not, this is an anomaly. I actually started working on today's talk on Friday. I did all of the readings, all of the non-sermon related slides for the screen here, with the exception of the readings, which I forgot to put in until this morning, but that's neither here nor there. And I did the handouts, and I printed everything, which put me ahead of the game, but alas, I am still meant to do the writing the day before I speak, because I got one sentence in. Just one on Friday. And then I went, nope, we're going to wait for Saturday again. I didn't have a clue how to approach where I was going until yesterday afternoon. And then something unexpected happened. And before I tell you what it was, let's review real quick, okay? We've been talking about the idea of a mirage. Okay, something that everyone with eyes can see the same way, but which only changes relevance with the story that we attach to it. Like that lake in Death Valley that I told you about. Looking at it, everybody there could agree that it was a beautiful, clear, reflective lake, right? But some saw it as a miracle, that nature was springing back to life, but others saw it as a sign of cataclysm. They saw it as the whole ecosystem in chaos. But in reality, it was just water. There was a lot of water sitting in the desert. Okay? And our idea here is to cut through the illusion to find the constant. The mirage, get rid of the stories. So last week, I asked you to answer one question. Okay? Who are you? How many people remembered to bring your notebooks? Nary a one. I knew that. I knew that was going to happen. That's okay, because you remember, and that's awesome. So yes, I gave you notebooks and pens. Bring them back. If you didn't get one, I still have a couple more in the office. Now, for those of you who bravely took on the extra credit, thank you. You trusted me with your inner thoughts and your inner feelings about yourself, and I don't take that for granted at all. It helps me to consider, when I hear these things from you, the ways that other people might be thinking. And that in turn shapes how these talks move. And sometimes, occasionally, you get the bonus of my personal response, which is hopefully something that you can use, and at the very least, something that you find amusing in some way. Now, did you all do your homework? Did you write down, who are you? Okay. Because you're going to have a new assignment this week. And we're going to get to that before I'm through today. It's not a hard one, I promise you. It's probably quite a bit easier than the one that you just did. Okay, that question, who am I? That seems to be really simple on the surface, right? Who am I? How many people started writing and found it a little bit more difficult to answer once you had a pen in your hand? Yeah. I see some heads nodding. It is a tough one because without context, it's hard to know where we're supposed to begin. For instance, for a job interview, you'd know how to respond, right? With everything that's relative to the work that you're hoping to be hired to do. So you have a jumping off point. At a party or in a social situation, it's another question altogether. Because it becomes, what things about myself will other people find interesting? Or what can I say to connect with them, right? That question's entirely different from that perspective. But when the question is open-ended, with nothing to base our approach on or apply our filters to, it can feel a little more challenging. One thing I want to make very, very clear is that nowhere along this path of discovering who you really are you allowed to judge. Hear that. Not yourself, not anybody else. That is not something which had occurred to me to tell you until 5 o'clock yesterday. And the way that it did occur to me was really, really interesting, because you know that I sit here and I work at the dining room bookshelf. Sorry, Mike. So I have the dining room bookshelf, and then I have the other dining room bookshelves, plural, which sit directly behind me. And I had actually turned around to look for a particular Alan Watts book, which, as it turns out, I do have. Mona, thank you for bringing me another copy. When a very, very old volume of a book of best-loved poetry from 1936 was like screaming at me. And I'm going, I don't want poetry. All right, fine. So I plucked it off the shelf, and I was like, fine. If you're going to yell at me to pick you up, I'm going to pick you up. And so I opened the book, wherever I opened the book to, and I was very, very, very amused to discover what I had opened to. When I say who, what animal do you think of? Yep. And that is who met me on that page. This is called The Owl Critic by James Thomas Fields, and it is absolutely adorable. Who stuffed that white owl? No one spoke in the shop. The barber was busy and he couldn't stop. The customers waiting their turns were all reading the Daily, the Herald, the Post, little heeding. The young man who blurted such a blunt question, not one raised a head or even made a suggestion, and the barber kept on shaving. "Don't you see, Mr. Brown," cried the youth with a frown, "how wrong the whole thing is? How preposterous each wing is, how flattened the head is, how jammed down the neck is. In short, the whole owl, what an ignorant wreck it is. I make no apology, I've learned owliology. I've passed days and nights in 100 collections and cannot be blinded to any deflections arising from unskillful fingers that fall to stuff a bird right from his beak to his tail. Mr. Brown, take that bird down, or you'll soon be the laughing stock all over town." And the barber kept on shaving. "I've studied owls and other night fowls, and I tell you what I know to be true. An owl cannot roost with his limbs so unloosed. No owl in this world has ever had his claws curled, ever had his legs slanted, ever had his bill canted, ever had his neck screwed into that attitude. He can't do it because 'tis against all bird laws. Anatomy teaches, ornithology preaches, an owl has a toe that can't turn out so. I've made the white owl my study for years, and to see such a job almost moves me to tears. Mr. Brown, I'm amazed you should be so gone crazed as to put up a bird in that posture. Absurd. To look on that owl really brings on a dizziness. The man who stuffed him didn't know half his business." And the barber kept on shaving. "Examine those eyes. I am filled with surprise. Taxidermists should pass off on you such poor glass. So unnatural they seem. They'd make Audubon scream and John Burroughs laugh to encounter such chaff. Do take that bird down. Have him stuffed again, Brown." And the barber kept on shaving. "With some sawdust and bark, I could stuff in the dark an owl better than that. I could make an old hat look more like an owl than that horrid fowl. stuck up there so stiff like a side of coarse leather. In fact, about him, there's not one natural feather. Just then, with a wink and a sly, normal lurch, the owl very gravely got down from his perch, walked round, and regarded his fault-finding critic, who thought he was stuffed, with a glance analytic, and then fairly hooted as if to say, "Your learning's at fault this time, anyway. Don't waste it again on a live bird, I pray. I'm an owl. You're another, Sir Critic. Good day." And the barber kept on shaving. Wasn't that cute? And wasn't that the strangest synchronicity to run into? I'd never heard it before then. But do you get the point there? No judging yourself or others in this assignment of asking who. Capiche? Everybody got it? All right. Okay, now that we have cleared that up, as a minister wearing my minister hat, my inquisitive little brain got to wondering what varying religions have had to say about the question of who we are. And so, as I often do, I went spelunking on those bookshelves and tables in my house, and then into the Googleverse, and I discovered many fascinating things. And to be fair, they were fascinating to me. I understand this. I can appreciate that that may not be fascinating to everyone else, but hang with me here for a second, because if I am headed where I think I am with this series, you're going to be glad that you stuck around to learn this. It will matter. In Christianity, Jesus is quoted many times describing us in many different ways, and I think he was very clever to do it this way, because he made the definition match the situation. First, there were visual or functional metaphors from the Gospel of Matthew. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. And it continues, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light so shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Now, if I had to translate that into modern language, I would say, you are so amazingly and beautifully you, the only you ever. If you try to be someone else, then the world loses something precious. What good is a world filled with carbon copies? Be who you are, because who you are shines more brightly than anything I've ever seen. Stop hiding your light, be boldly and gloriously you, because the world needs to see what God looks like living as you. And honestly, I think Jesus would approve of that interpretation. Jesus used many other words to describe us in other contexts, and rather than read you all of the excerpts from all of them and cheat you out of a potentially entertaining talk, I listed a bunch of the biblical references on the screen so you can take a picture and look them up yourself at home. Okay, everybody has a Bible, yes? Most people? If not, see me. I'll probably have one kicking around somewhere. Now, you may not, however, have some of the other information that I have. Now, I didn't know this. I didn't know this particular point, and I'm pretty well versed in other faith traditions, because all of them have some very, very beautiful ways of describing humanity, many, many, many different ways, and all of them are relevant and important and beautiful and worth investigating. But again, I'm going to let you investigate most of that. What I would like to share are some of the extraordinarily stunning, gorgeous examples of what some have said about our spiritual nature. In Buddhism, the imagery used alone is spectacular. In the Lotus Sutra, Humans are described as lotuses rooted in the mud of suffering, but possessing the inherent potential to rise above the water and bloom into full enlightenment. And give me a minute to get my mouth around the word. The Tathagata Sutra. I did it. You heard that, right? Tathagata Sutra. Humans are described as impoverished people who are entirely unaware that a priceless treasure is buried right beneath their own home. Now, I want to pause right there. Buried beneath our own home. So I ask you, what is the home of the soul? Yep, the body. So, in other words, this is saying that we are unaware that the treasure is within. It sounds like Jesus and the Buddha may have both learned from the same source, huh? That is something that a lot of theologians and scholars have debated for centuries, and it doesn't matter to me who's right or wrong. I just love the echoes. I like seeing those things repeated throughout all the faiths. And I know I say that a lot, but to me, finding those beautiful synchronous teachings from one faith to another or one mystic to another is like music. I feel this perfect kind of stillness when I hear that echo. And that stillness is why I teach. But teachers must also learn, and I did exactly that yesterday. When one of those echoes came back to my own blundering teaching. When I began this series, I knew I had a question. Who are you? Later, I realized that that question would require very strategic steps to allow you to get through all of the layers of illusion and find the true answer. What I did not know until last night was that the Hindus have been doing exactly this for just shy of 3,000 years. And the idea of a mirage is literal in their language. The word is Maya, which translates to mirage, magic, or that which is not. It refers to the powerful cosmic force that creates the appearance of the material world, veiling the ultimate spiritual reality, or Brahman, and causing individuals to mistake the temporary ego and physical universe for absolute truth. Let me say this a different way. Imagine a traveler who visits a grand, bustling jewelry marketplace. Every shop window is filled with beautiful items. In the first shop, the traveler sees a heavy, ornate royal crown. In the second shop, a delicate, glittering diamond ring. And in the third, a thick, sturdy warrior's bracelet. The traveler looks at passers-by and he says, "Look at how completely different these things are. The crown is majestic, the ring is romantic, and the bracelet is tough. They have nothing in common, but they're breathtaking." An old jeweler overhears this. And he smiles and he invites the traveler inside. And he reaches up and he brings a heavy, sparkling crown down from the shelf behind him. And he melts it down right before the traveler's eyes and pours out a glowing liquid. "What is that?" the traveler asks. The jeweler replies, "That is gold." He reaches into his pocket and he pulls out a delicate ring and melts it down. "And what is this?" the jeweler asked. "It is also gold," says the traveler. Finally, he plucks from his own wrist a solid, strong bracelet and holds it out for the traveler to see. "And this," he says. Gold, the traveler realizes. The jeweler nods and says, the crown, the ring, and the bracelet were just temporary shapes. They were names and forms, but their unchanging true reality from the very beginning until the end was always just gold. In Hinduism, there is a meditation practice called neti neti, which translates from the Sanskrit to not this, not that. And the parable I just told you explains it clearly, although indirectly. In life, we get completely caught up in the jewelry of our existence. We look at ourselves and we say, I am my thoughts. I am my emotions and my relationships. I am my physical body and my career. But these are just temporary shapes. They change over time. When you sit in neti neti meditation, you merely point to these shapes and say, not this, not this. You look at your racing thoughts and you say, I can observe these thoughts, so I cannot be the thoughts. Neti neti. You look at your changing emotions and you say, I am the one watching this anxiety or this joy pass by, so I am not the emotion. Neti neti. You look at your physical body and say, my body ages and it changes, but the I inside remains. How many of y'all have gotten older and you realize that when you look in the mirror, the way that you look and the way that you feel are two completely different ages? That is what I'm saying here. The I inside remains. I am not just this flesh and bone. Neti neti. By melting away all of the temporary shapes and names and labels, you are left with the glowing raw material of who you actually are. So who are you? Who are you really? I would like you to revisit the answers that you wrote to that question from last week's assignment. And you got a handout this morning. Make sure you bring that with you. I want you to remove everything from that list which describes something that you do or have done. Education, work, hobbies, interests, titles. All of that is doing, not being. I also want you to remove everything which relies on someone else for it to be true. Mother, father, daughter, sister, friend. Okay, that is associating, not being. What does it matter who you associate with? Who are you without anyone else? Okay? I waited just then because I wanted you to notice what your mind does when it's asked to remove labels. It tries to find new words, new labels to satisfy the answer. Neti, neti. And after all of those things have been crossed off of your list, I want you to ask yourselves a new question. That is, what moves me? What makes my heart sing or cry? Or in the language of the Los Angeles actors that we're surrounded with in this neck of the world, what's my motivation? I know that all of these things sound like work, and it is, but it is simple work, and it's worth it. You are going to be very, very surprised when you see yourself clearly. So do the work and come back next week for the next simple step, because I see you. I know who you are, and you are beautiful. Come and let me show you. Amen.